For more than 300 years, the Kargan Dominion ruled the stars through fear, fire, and endless war. Across hundreds of systems, entire civilizations fell before their giant fleets. They had crushed 164 enemies without suffering a single true defeat. Every victory made them more arrogant, and every conquered world added more pride to their empire. Their supreme commander, General Varric, believed no force in the galaxy could challenge them anymore. His name alone caused fear across the outer colonies, and many worlds surrendered before the Dominion even fired a single shot. Inside the massive command ship called the Iron Fang, Varric stood before a giant star map while his officers watched quietly. The latest target glowed in blue near the center of the display. Earth. Human territory was smaller than the Dominion, and their colonies were spread across only a few systems. To Varric, humanity looked weak, divided, and soft. Reports from Dominion spies described humans as emotional creatures who argued among themselves constantly. Some officers warned that humans were unpredictable, but Varric laughed at those concerns. He believed unpredictability was simply another word for weakness. Beside him stood Commander Rian, a young officer who had served under Varric for years. Unlike the others, Rian did not celebrate the coming invasion. He had studied human history carefully and noticed something strange. Humanity survived countless wars on its own world before reaching space. Their history was full of disasters, civil wars, revolutions, and brutal conflicts, yet they always recovered stronger than before. Rian quietly mentioned this during the briefing, but several officers mocked him immediately. One female commander named Sora smiled coldly and said humans were nothing more than frightened traitors hiding behind weak defenses. The room filled with laughter, and Varric ordered preparations for invasion without another thought. Far away, inside a hidden military station beneath the frozen surface of Europa, Admiral Jaiwan studied the Dominion fleet through holographic displays. Around him, human officers moved quickly through dark control rooms filled with flashing lights and silent tension. Jaiwan was calm despite the danger approaching Earth. He knew the Dominion's history better than most people alive. He had spent years studying every battle they fought. The Dominion always attacked the same way. They overwhelmed enemies with massive force, destroyed communication lines, then demanded surrender before resistance could organize. Most civilizations panicked and collapsed quickly. Humanity would not. Standing near Jaiwan was Captain Hannah, one of Earth's best tactical commanders. She watched incoming reports from border colonies with sharp focus. Several outer mining stations had already been evacuated quietly, and civilian ships were moving deeper into safer territory. Everything was happening exactly as planned. Jaiwan knew humanity could not win through direct strength alone. The Dominion had larger fleets and more ships, but humans had something different. Patience, preparation, and experience born from surviving their own violent history. Across the solar system, secret shipyards hidden beneath oceans and inside asteroid fields worked without rest. New weapons were loaded onto silent warships. Stealth drones disappeared into deep space. Defense stations hidden inside Saturn's rings slowly powered on for the first time in decades. Humanity had prepared for invasion long before the Dominion ever arrived. On Earth itself, however, normal life continued almost peacefully. Cities remained bright at night, trains moved through giant towers, and news networks argued about politics as usual. Humanity wanted the Dominion to believe Earth was distracted and divided. It was part of the trap. Days later, the Dominion fleet crossed into human-controlled territory. Thousands of massive warships filled the darkness of space like an endless storm. Smaller human patrol ships immediately retreated after brief encounters, making the invasion look easy. General Varric stood proudly on the bridge of the Iron Fang while officers celebrated another coming victory. Giant screens displayed fleeing human vessels, and Dominion soldiers cheered loudly. Commander Sora mocked the humans openly, calling them cowards who feared real battle. Yet Commander Rian remained silent. Something felt wrong to him. The human retreats were too organized. Colonies were abandoned too quickly. There was panic nowhere. Even more strange, several Dominion scouting ships vanished without explanation near asteroid fields along the frontier. Communication signals suddenly failed in certain sectors, and supply transports reported strange interference before disappearing entirely. When Rian reported these events to Varek, the general dismissed everything immediately. He claimed frightened humans were sabotaging their own systems before retreating. The Dominion fleet continued deeper toward Earth. Meanwhile, Admiral Jaiwin observed every movement carefully from Europa. Human intelligence ships tracked the invaders constantly while remaining invisible. Small attack teams struck isolated Dominion supply lines before vanishing into hidden routes. Entire cargo fleets disappeared in silence. Human hackers infected enemy systems with false signals and corrupted maps. Still, humanity avoided major battle. Jaiwin wanted the Dominion confident. He wanted them deep inside the solar system before the real fighting began. Captain Hannah secretly led stealth squadrons through abandoned mining tunnels near Jupiter's moons. Her pilots attacked fuel convoys and sensor relays, weakening the Dominion slowly without exposing humanity's main forces. Every small victory fed Varek's arrogance even more. He believed humans were collapsing before him. Across conquered systems outside human space, billions watched the invasion through live Dominion broadcasts. Varek proudly promised Earth would fall within days, becoming the Empire's 165th victory. Many alien civilizations pitted humanity already. None believed Earth could survive. But some older survivors of Dominion wars noticed something strange. Human forces were not surrendering the way other civilizations had. They were waiting. Back inside the Iron Fang, Commander Rian studied fresh reports with growing fear. Another scouting fleet had vanished near Saturn. No wreckage, no distress calls, just silence. He approached General Varek once more and warned him that humans might be preparing something larger. But Varek's patience finally broke. Furious at hearing doubts again, he publicly humiliated Rian before the other officers. He declared that fear had poisoned Rian's mind and ordered him removed from strategic planning. Commander Sora smiled proudly while guards escorted Rian away from the command chamber. Alone in his quarters later that night, Rian stared through the window at endless stars and felt unease growing inside him. The Dominion had conquered many species, but humanity felt different. Humans did not beg for peace. They did not send surrender messages. They simply watched and waited. Near Mars, hidden human fleets remained completely dark while thousands of soldiers prepared quietly for war. Among them was Colonel Min, a veteran commander with scars from earlier border conflicts against pirate empires. He trained young recruits daily inside giant underground bases. Many soldiers were nervous, but Min reminded them of one important truth. Humanity had survived extinction threats many times before reaching the stars. This invasion would be no different. Earth would fight until the end if necessary. Far above, civilian ships continued evacuating children and families toward protected shelters, hidden across the solar system. Yet even ordinary citizens showed little panic. Humanity understood danger well. Schools remained open. Factories continued building weapons day and night. Volunteers lined up outside military stations across Earth, Mars, and Europa. The closer the Dominion fleet moved toward Earth, the calmer humanity appeared. General Varek mistook that calmness for weakness. He could not understand that humans became most dangerous when silent. As the giant Dominion armada finally crossed beyond Jupiter and entered the inner solar system, hidden defense systems quietly activated beneath the ice of distant moons and inside the rings of Saturn. Thousands of human ships powered on without lights, waiting patiently in darkness. Admiral Jaiwin stood inside the Europa Command Center and looked at the incoming fleet one final time before turning toward his officers. The trap was ready. Humanity had allowed the enemy to march exactly where they wanted. Soon the Dominion would learn the terrible mistake behind their 164 victories. They had spent centuries fighting civilizations that feared survival more than sacrifice. Earth was different. Humanity was born from war, shaped by disaster, and hardened by history itself. And for the first time in centuries, the unstoppable Dominion was about to face an enemy that had been preparing for this moment long before the invasion ever began. The Dominion fleet continued moving deeper into the solar system with growing confidence. and every passing hour made General Varric more certain that Earth would soon kneel before him. Thousands of massive warships crossed beyond Jupiter in perfect formation, while giant engines burned blue against the darkness of space. Inside the Iron Fang, officers celebrated already as if the war had ended before the real battle even began. Commander Sora proudly announced that human resistance was collapsing faster than expected, and Dominion broadcasts spread those reports across conquered worlds. Many alien civilizations watched silently as the mighty empire pushed toward Earth, believing humanity's defeat was only days away. But hidden behind that calm advance, strange problems continued spreading through the Dominion fleet. Supply convoys vanished between sectors without warning. Long-range sensors failed at random moments. Communication relays produced false signals that sent patrol groups into empty regions of space. Entire scouting teams disappeared near asteroid fields, leaving behind only silence. Commander Rian noticed the pattern immediately. None of the failures felt natural. Humans were hunting them slowly, cutting pieces away while refusing direct battle. He tried once more to warn General Varric, but the proud commander refused to listen. Varric believed humans were weak creatures relying on tricks because they lacked strength. He ordered the fleet to advance faster toward Earth, convinced that fear was already destroying human morale. Meanwhile, beneath the frozen surface of Europa, Admiral Jaiwin watched the invasion carefully from the underground command center. Giant holographic maps floated through the dark room while officers tracked every enemy movement. Human forces remained hidden across the solar system, waiting patiently for the right moment. Captain Hannah stood beside Jaiwin while reviewing reports from stealth squadrons operating near Saturn and Mars. Several attacks against Dominion fuel carriers had succeeded perfectly. Human pilots used small silent ships equipped with advanced cloaking systems, striking quickly before vanishing into darkness. Every lost Dominion supply ship weakened the invasion little by little. Jaiwin understood that wars were not won through anger or pride. Wars were won through patience, planning, and knowing exactly when to strike. Across Earth, factories continued operating day and night. Deep under oceans, hidden shipyards produced new destroyers and attack drones without stopping. On Mars, Colonel Min trained soldiers inside giant underground bunkers built beneath the red deserts. Young recruits learned how to fight in destroyed cities, inside damaged stations, and across airless battlefields. Humanity knew the Dominion would eventually reach Earth itself if they were not stopped first. Every soldier understood the danger, but instead of fear, there was determination growing across human space. Ordinary citizens volunteered for defense work, engineers repaired old warships, and mining crews secretly helped build hidden weapons platforms inside asteroid belts. Humanity had faced impossible situations before throughout its violent history. Survival was part of their nature. Back inside the Iron Fang, tension slowly began spreading among the Dominion officers despite their public celebrations. Commander Sora tried to maintain confidence, but even she could not ignore the growing list of vanished patrols. One evening, while the fleet passed near the outer moons of Saturn, an emergency signal suddenly echoed through the command bridge. A Dominion cruiser near a mining sector had stopped responding completely. Moments later, broken fragments of distress messages reached the fleet. Explosions, unknown attackers, total systems failure, then silence. General Varric immediately ordered nearby ships to investigate. Hours later, the search teams returned with nothing. No wreckage, no survivors, no enemy ships. It was as if the cruiser had disappeared into empty space itself. Rian watched the reports carefully and felt cold fear building inside him. Humans were not retreating randomly. They were guiding the Dominion somewhere. Still, Varric refused to slow the invasion. Instead, he grew even more aggressive. Furious that invisible attacks continued against his fleet, he ordered several outer colonies destroyed completely as punishment. Dominion warships bombarded abandoned mining stations and civilian settlements, turning empty structures into burning debris. Varric believed terror would force humanity into open battle. But Earth remained silent. No surrender messages arrived. No desperate negotiations came from human leaders. Only quiet darkness waited ahead. Far away near Saturn's rings, hidden human defense stations slowly activated deep beneath the ice and rock. Massive rail cannons turned toward approaching Dominion routes while stealth mines drifted silently between the frozen debris. Captain Hannah personally supervised the preparation from a hidden command ship buried inside a hollow asteroid. Around her, hundreds of human pilots waited inside attack craft with engines powered down. Everyone understood the plan. The Dominion needed to believe they were winning until the trap finally closed around them. On Earth, news broadcasts carefully controlled public panic while governments prepared for possible invasion. Cities strengthened underground shelters, hospitals trained emergency workers, and military convoys moved quietly through major population centers at night. Yet daily life still continued. Children attended school. Markets remained open. Humanity had learned long ago that fear could destroy societies faster than war itself. Admiral Jaiwin wanted the Dominion to see calmness, not panic. That calmness confused the enemy even more. One night, Commander Rian secretly accessed old records from the Dominion archives. He studied the histories of the Empire's past conquests and noticed something disturbing. Every civilization the Dominion defeated had acted exactly the same way. They panicked. They surrendered territory quickly. They begged for mercy once their fleets collapsed. Humanity was doing none of those things. Instead of retreating in fear, humans were shaping the battlefield itself. They abandoned systems only after stripping them of useful resources. They evacuated civilians with perfect order. Their hidden attacks targeted supply lines instead of warships. Rian finally understood the truth. Humanity was preparing for a long war, not a final defense. Before he could report his concerns again, Commander Sora entered his chamber unexpectedly. She accused him of spreading doubt among the officers and weakening fleet morale. Their argument grew heated as Rian insisted the Dominion was walking directly into danger. But Sora remained loyal to Varric completely. She believed fear had broken Rian's confidence. Before leaving, she warned him that the general would soon remove him from command entirely if he continued questioning the invasion. Alone again, Rian stared through the observation window toward distant Saturn. For the first time in his military career, he wondered if the Dominion could actually lose. Near Mars, Colonel Min received new orders from Europa Command. Hidden fleets stationed beneath the planet's surface began moving toward secret launch points while engineers armed experimental weapons never used in real combat before. Among those weapons were gravity bombs capable of crushing enemy ships from the inside. Humanity had hidden such technology for decades, fearing its destructive power. Now those weapons might decide the survival of Earth itself. Across the solar system, silent preparations continued while the Dominion moved deeper into the trap without realizing it. Days later, the giant invasion fleet finally approached Saturn's orbit. Beautiful rings of ice and stone stretched across space ahead of them like shining rivers of silver. General Varric stood proudly on the bridge while officers admired the view, completely unaware that thousands of hidden human weapons were buried inside those frozen rings. Dominion sensors scanned the region and reported almost no military activity. The path toward Earth appeared nearly open. Varric smiled with satisfaction and ordered the fleet forward at full speed. Commander Sora praised him confidently, while crews prepared for the final march toward humanity's homeworld. But deep beneath the ice fields of Saturn, human soldiers watched the invasion fleet enter, firing range one ship at a time. Captain Hannah received confirmation signals from hidden defense stations across the rings. Rail cannons locked onto enemy formations. Stealth bombers prepared launch sequences. Minefields activated silently beneath drifting debris. In the Europa Command Center, Admiral Jaiwin stood quietly as every human fleet across the solar system waited for his command. The trap humanity had spent years building was finally ready to close. And as the proud Dominion armada crossed deeper into Saturn's shadow, still believing victory was certain, none of them understood that they were no longer advancing toward Earth. They were marching directly into their own destruction. The massive Dominion fleet moved deeper into Saturn's orbit with complete confidence, and thousands of warships advanced between the glowing rings like a giant wall of steel and fire. Inside the Iron Fong, General Varric stood proudly on the command bridge, while officers celebrated what they believed would be the final stage of humanity's defeat. Commander Sora smiled as sensor reports showed almost no visible human defenses ahead. To the Dominion, it looked like Earth had already accepted defeat before the real battle even started. But Commander Rian remained silent near the back of the bridge, watching the endless rings of Saturn carefully. Something about the quiet darkness around them felt wrong. Human forces had disappeared too completely. There were no desperate attacks, no final defensive lines, and no surrender messages. Only silence surrounded the fleet as it crossed deeper into the giant planet's shadow. Far away beneath Europa's frozen surface, Admiral Jaiwin stood inside the command center, while officers around him waited for the final order. Giant holograms displayed every Dominion ship entering the trap zone. Captain Hannah monitored hidden fleets buried inside Saturn's rings, while Colonel Min prepared attack squadrons hidden behind nearby moons. Every human force across the system had spent years preparing for this exact moment. The Dominion believed they were marching toward Earth. In truth, they had already entered humanity's battlefield. As the first Dominion battleships passed through the outer rings, small signals quietly flashed across hidden human defense stations. Thousands of rail cannons powered on beneath layers of ice and rock. Stealth bombers armed their weapons while cloaked drones drifted silently closer to enemy formations. Jaiwin looked around the command center one final time before speaking calmly. He gave only 2 words. Begin attack. At that exact moment, Saturn's rings exploded with fire. Massive railguns hidden deep inside the frozen debris fired together, and bright lines of blue light ripped across space faster than the eye could follow. The front line of the Dominion fleet vanished almost instantly. Giant warships broke apart as metal hulls shattered under the force of human weapons. Explosions spread through enemy formations while broken ships crashed into each other across the rings. Inside the Iron Fong, alarms screamed across the bridge as officers fell into panic. Commander Sora shouted for shields while emergency systems flashed red around the room. General Varric stared in disbelief as dozens of Dominion cruisers disappeared from tactical screens within seconds. Before the fleet could recover, hidden minefields activated beneath them. Entire sectors of space erupted into explosions as stealth mines detonated against engines and weapon systems. Human bombers suddenly emerged from inside the rings, striking fuel carriers and communication ships before vanishing again into darkness. Confusion spread rapidly through the Dominion fleet. Their formations collapsed as ships struggled to avoid debris and incoming fire. Commander Rian grabbed a control station and tried restoring communication lines, but human electronic attacks filled Dominion systems with false signals and fake targets. Some ships accidentally fired on friendly vessels while others chased ghost fleets created by human hackers. For the first time in centuries, the mighty Dominion Armada had completely lost control of a battlefield. Far below the chaos, Captain Hannah led attack squadrons through the rings with deadly precision. Her pilots moved between floating ice fields while launching missiles into damaged Dominion ships. Human fighters were smaller and weaker than Dominion warships, but they were faster, quieter, and far more flexible. Hannah watched one enemy destroyer explode after railgun fire pierced its reactor core, sending burning debris spinning across space. Around her, human pilots attacked relentlessly before disappearing back into the cover of Saturn's rings. Inside the Europa Command Center, Admiral Jaiwin remained calm while reports flooded the room. The first phase of the trap had worked perfectly. Dominion losses were already massive, but the real battle had only begun. Jaiwin ordered hidden reserve fleets forward while Colonel Min launched heavy assault carriers from behind Saturn's moons. Thousands of human warships suddenly emerged from darkness surrounding the battlefield, trapping the Dominion fleet from every direction. General Varric finally realized the terrible truth. Humanity had allowed the invasion deliberately. Every retreat, every abandoned colony, every silent sector had been planned to lure the Dominion into Saturn's killing field. Furious beyond control, Varric ordered the entire fleet to push directly toward Earth and crush anything in their path. But the command came too late. Human forces already surrounded them completely. Massive battles erupted across the rings while burning wreckage drifted through space like endless storms of fire. Human drones swarmed Dominion cruisers from every angle, overwhelming shield systems through sheer numbers. Stealth ships targeted engines and weapon batteries before retreating into debris fields. Several damaged human vessels even rammed directly into enemy battleships, sacrificing themselves to destroy larger targets. Commander Sora watched the battlefield collapse around her with growing horror. Dominion formations that once looked unstoppable now scattered in panic while explosions filled every screen. Entire wings of the fleet vanished under coordinated human attacks. One giant carrier broke apart after hidden explosives inside captured cargo containers detonated near its reactor core. Another battleship disappeared completely after triggering an experimental gravity mine hidden within the rings. Rian tried organizing defensive lines, but communication systems continued failing under constant human interference. Across the galaxy, billions watched emergency Dominion broadcasts showing burning warships and desperate distress calls. Conquered civilizations could hardly believe what they were seeing. The empire that had crushed 164 worlds without defeat was being destroyed by humanity. Near the center of the battlefield, Colonel Min personally led assault teams against Dominion command ships. Human Marines boarded damaged enemy vessels through burning hull breaches and fought brutal close-range battles inside dark corridors. Min moved through smoke and gunfire beside his soldiers while explosions shook the enemy ship around them. Humanity understood war in ways the Dominion never expected. Humans fought not only with machines and weapons, but with pure determination. Even wounded soldiers continued fighting until their final breath. General Varric refused to retreat despite the disaster unfolding around him. Pride consumed him completely. He believed the Dominion could still force victory through raw strength alone. He ordered every remaining heavy battleship toward Saturn's inner orbit where human fleets were strongest. Commander Rian argued desperately against the decision, warning that the fleet needed to escape before total destruction became unavoidable. But Varric ignored him and accused him of cowardice once again. Moments later, another devastating human attack struck the Dominion center line. Hidden railguns buried inside giant ice fragments fired directly into the advancing formation. Battleships shattered one after another while reactor explosions lit the darkness brighter than stars. Commander Sora was thrown across the bridge as nearby shockwaves rocked the Iron Fong violently. Several sections of the flagship lost power completely while emergency sirens screamed through the corridors. Outside the ship, endless wreckage drifted through Saturn's rings. Human forces continued tightening the trap slowly and carefully. Admiral Jaiwan understood the Dominion still possessed dangerous firepower even while collapsing. He ordered steady pressure instead of reckless attacks. Human fleets moved like hunters surrounding wounded prey, striking weak points before disappearing again into cover. Captain Hannah's bombers destroyed fuel reserves while Colonel Min's assault carriers captured damaged enemy vessels one by one. Hours passed as the battle grew more brutal. Dominion losses climbed higher with every minute. Entire sectors of the rings burned with drifting wreckage and frozen bodies. For the first time in history, the Dominion fleet was not fighting for conquest. It was fighting for survival. Inside the Iron Fong, Commander Rian stared silently at the ruined battlefield through shattered screens. He finally understood why humanity had remained calm since the invasion began. Humans had never expected mercy. They had prepared to destroy the Dominion completely from the very beginning. General Varric still shouted orders across the bridge while refusing to accept defeat, but many officers no longer listened. Fear had spread across the fleet faster than fire. Near Saturn's glowing horizon, hidden human defense stations continued firing endlessly into trapped Dominion formations, while more Earth fleets arrived from deep space. The battle that Varric expected to become his 165th victory had instead become the beginning of the Dominion's destruction, and as burning warships filled Saturn's rings like floating graves, humanity prepared for the final phase of the war. The battle around Saturn continued without mercy as the once proud Dominion fleet slowly collapsed under constant human attacks, and the glowing rings of the giant planet became filled with burning wreckage, drifting metal, and shattered warships. Across the battlefield, Broken Dominion vessels floated helplessly, while explosions flashed endlessly through the darkness of space. Human fleets attacked from every direction with deadly coordination, never giving the enemy a chance to recover. Inside the Iron Fang, emergency sirens screamed through damaged corridors, while smoke filled entire sections of the flagship. General Varek stood near the main command screen with rage burning across his face as more Dominion ships vanished from tactical displays every minute. His perfect record of 164 victories was being destroyed before his eyes, yet pride still refused to let him accept reality. Commander Sora struggled to maintain order among panicked officers, while repair crews rushed through the ship trying to restore failing systems. Nearby, Commander Rian watched the battlefield silently with growing despair. He knew the war was already lost. The Dominion fleet was trapped, surrounded, and slowly bleeding to death inside humanity's carefully prepared battlefield. Far away beneath Europa's frozen surface, Admiral Jaiwan calmly observed the destruction unfolding exactly as planned. Human fleets continued moving through Saturn's rings like hunters surrounding wounded prey. Every Dominion attempt to regroup was shattered by hidden mines, stealth bombers, and sudden railgun attacks from concealed stations buried inside ice fields. Captain Hannah led attack squadrons through narrow gaps in the rings while targeting damaged enemy carriers and supply ships. Human pilots moved with terrifying precision, striking weak points before vanishing again into darkness. Years of preparation were finally paying off. Humanity had spent decades building hidden defenses throughout the solar system, knowing one day an empire like the Dominion would eventually arrive. Now those preparations were turning Saturn into a giant graveyard. Near the outer edge of the battlefield, Colonel Min commanded boarding operations against crippled Dominion ships drifting away from the main fighting. Human Marines entered damaged vessels through shattered hulls and fought brutal close-range battles inside dark corridors filled with smoke, fire, and broken machinery. Dominion soldiers were stronger physically, but human troops fought with desperate determination that shocked their enemies. Even heavily wounded Marines continued advancing through gunfire while protecting each other at all costs. Min himself led several assaults personally, moving through enemy ships beside his soldiers while explosions shook the walls around them. He understood the importance of ending the invasion completely before any surviving Dominion forces could escape the solar system. Back inside the Iron Fang, General Varek finally ordered a full retreat toward deep space after realizing the fleet could no longer advance toward Earth. But the moment retreat formations began moving, hidden human minefields activated across the escape routes. Entire groups of Dominion ships exploded instantly as gravity mines crushed their hulls inward like paper. Panic spread completely through the remaining fleet. Some captains ignored orders and tried fleeing alone, only to be hunted down by waiting human destroyers hidden among Saturn's moons. Others attempted desperate counterattacks against human defense stations, but every assault ended in disaster. Humanity controlled the battlefield completely now. Across the galaxy, conquered civilizations watched emergency transmissions from the collapsing Dominion fleet with disbelief. For centuries, the Dominion had ruled through fear, crushing every enemy that resisted them. Now billions witnessed the impossible. The Empire was losing. Rebellions quietly began spreading across occupied worlds as news of the disaster reached distant systems. Many alien species who once feared the Dominion suddenly realized the Empire could bleed like anyone else. Inside human space, however, celebrations had not yet begun. Earth's leaders understood the danger was not over. As long as General Varek survived, the Dominion would continue fighting. Admiral Jaiwan therefore prepared the final phase of the operation. Deep beneath the oceans of Europa and hidden inside Martian underground bases, humanity's largest reserve fleets powered on for launch. Among them were experimental warships equipped with forbidden gravity weapons capable of tearing enemy vessels apart from within. Those weapons had never been used before because their destructive power terrified even human scientists. But now Earth faced total war, and survival mattered more than fear. Hours later, massive human carriers emerged near Mars alongside dozens of black warships carrying gravity cannons. Their arrival changed the entire battlefield instantly. Admiral Jaiwan ordered all fleets forward together, while hidden defense stations increased fire across Saturn's orbit. The remaining Dominion ships suddenly found themselves trapped between multiple attack waves from every direction. Giant human railguns fired endlessly while missile swarms crossed space like storms of fire. Dominion shields collapsed under the pressure. One by one, massive enemy battleships broke apart in explosions bright enough to light entire sectors of space. Inside the Iron Fang, Commander Sora struggled desperately to restore communications, while officers shouted over alarms and emergency warnings. Entire sections of the flagship were burning now. Several engines had failed completely, and life support systems flickered across lower decks. Yet General Varric still refused surrender. Pride had consumed him fully. He ordered every surviving ship into one final assault directly toward Earth, hoping raw force might still break humanity's defenses. Commander Rian could hardly believe the madness of the order. The fleet was dying, and Varric still cared more about pride than survival. Furious arguments erupted across the bridge as some officers demanded surrender while others obeyed Varric blindly. Before the conflict could grow worse, another devastating human attack struck the flagship. A hidden railgun shot pierced the Iron Fang's shields and tore through several lower sections of the ship. Explosions ripped through internal corridors while lights across the bridge flickered violently. Crew members were thrown across the floor as the giant vessel shook from the impact. Outside, human destroyers closed around the damaged flagship while stealth bombers targeted its engines repeatedly. Near Saturn's inner orbit, Captain Hannah led a direct assault against fleeing Dominion carriers attempting escape toward deep space. Her bombers moved through burning debris while missiles destroyed enemy engines one after another. Several Dominion captains tried surrendering, but many others fought until destruction consumed them completely. Humanity showed no hesitation anymore. Every escaping ship represented future danger to Earth, and human commanders intended to end the invasion here and now. On the surface of Mars, civilians watched giant flashes in the sky as the battle continued far above the planet. News broadcasts showed burning Dominion wreckage falling through space while emergency crews prepared for possible debris impacts. Despite the destruction surrounding them, human morale remained strong. The Dominion had come expecting another easy conquest. Instead, they had awakened a species shaped by centuries of survival, conflict, and sacrifice. Humanity did not fear long wars. Humanity endured them. Back on the Iron Fang, Commander Rian finally confronted General Varric directly. He demanded surrender before the remaining fleet was destroyed completely. But Varric answered with fury, accusing Rian of betrayal before ordering guards to arrest him. Moments later, another massive explosion tore through the flagship as human gravity weapons struck nearby cruisers. Space itself twisted violently around several Dominion ships, crushing them inward until nothing remained except broken metal fragments drifting through darkness. Even hardened Dominion officers stared in horror at the sight. Human technology had been hidden far beyond anything the Empire expected. Chaos consumed the bridge completely as more systems failed. Commander Sora was badly injured during another explosion while emergency power flickered across the command deck. Smoke filled the room as burning debris rained from the ceiling. Through shattered observation windows, General Varric watched the remains of his once invincible fleet dying around Saturn. Thousands of ships were gone. Entire formations had disappeared. The Empire's greatest armada had become a floating graveyard. Yet even then, Varric refused surrender. Near the battlefield center, Admiral Jaiwin finally gave the order for complete destruction of the remaining Dominion command vessels. Human fleets closed in from every direction while hidden defense stations fired continuously through Saturn's rings. Colonel Min led boarding teams toward the crippled Iron Fang itself, preparing to capture or kill the Dominion leader personally. As human warships surrounded the burning flagship and endless wreckage drifted through the glowing rings behind them, the empire that once ruled through fear faced its final nightmare. After 164 victories, their arrogance had finally brought them to the one world strong enough, patient enough, and ruthless enough to destroy them completely. The final hours of the battle around Saturn became a nightmare of fire, smoke, and endless destruction as the remaining Dominion fleet collapsed completely under humanity's relentless assault. Broken warships drifted through the glowing rings while explosions lit the darkness like dying stars. Everywhere across the battlefield, shattered metal and burning debris floated between destroyed carriers and crippled cruisers. The once proud Dominion armada that had conquered 164 civilizations no longer looked like an unstoppable force. It looked like the remains of a dying empire. Human fleets surrounded the battlefield from every direction, while hidden railguns buried inside Saturn's rings continued firing without pause. Inside the burning Iron Fong, alarms screamed across damaged corridors as emergency lights flickered through clouds of smoke. Entire sections of the flagship had lost power completely, and wounded crew members filled the hallways, while repair teams struggled desperately to keep the giant vessel alive. General Varek stood near the shattered command window staring at the destruction outside with disbelief burning in his eyes. For the first time in his life, he could no longer deny reality. The Dominion had lost. Yet even then, his pride refused surrender. Around him, terrified officers argued while reports of total fleet collapse flooded the bridge. Commander Sora lay injured near a damaged console, while medics tried stopping the bleeding from wounds caused by earlier explosions. Commander Rian stood nearby, exhausted and covered in smoke, watching the Empire tear itself apart from inside. He had warned them from the beginning, but arrogance had blinded the Dominion long before they reached Earth. Outside the flagship, human destroyers tightened their formation around the crippled vessel, while Captain Hannah prepared the final attack. Her bombers moved silently between drifting wreckage as targeting systems locked onto the Iron Fong's remaining engines and weapons. Nearby, Colonel Min led boarding ships toward the burning flagship itself. Human Marines prepared for direct combat while explosions flashed across their armored helmets. They knew General Varek had to be captured or killed before the war could truly end. Far away beneath Europa's frozen surface, Admiral Jaiwin watched the final stage of the battle through holographic displays floating above the command center floor. Human officers around him worked silently while reports confirmed the destruction of nearly every Dominion fleet group across Saturn's orbit. Thousands of enemy ships were gone. Entire battle formations had vanished under railgun fire, gravity weapons, mines, and coordinated attacks. Humanity had not simply defeated the Dominion. Humanity had erased them. Across conquered worlds far beyond the solar system, billions watched the collapse of the Empire through emergency transmissions sent by surviving Dominion vessels. Rebellions spread rapidly across occupied planets as alien populations rose against weakened Dominion governors. For centuries, fear had kept the Empire alive. Now that fear was dying together with the fleet around Saturn. Back inside the Iron Fong, General Varek finally ordered every remaining weapon on the flagship to fire directly at the approaching human forces. Massive plasma cannons roared through space while damaged missile launchers released desperate attacks toward Captain Hannah's squadrons. Several human fighters exploded instantly, but the assault changed nothing. Human fleets continued advancing steadily through the wreckage. Hannah watched one of her closest pilots disappear in a blast of fire, yet she forced herself forward without hesitation. Humanity had sacrificed too much already to stop now. Her bombers launched another wave of missiles directly into the Iron Fong's damaged engines. Moments later, giant explosions ripped across the back section of the flagship, tearing entire armored plates away from the hull. Inside the ship, crew members were thrown violently across corridors while fires spread rapidly through lower decks. Commander Sora finally looked toward Varek with fear and anger mixed together. She demanded surrender before everyone aboard died uselessly. But Varek answered only with silence while staring at the burning battlefield outside. His empire, his victories, and his pride were all dying around him. Near the center of Saturn's rings, Colonel Min's boarding ships finally reached the Iron Fong. Human Marines blasted through damaged airlocks and entered the giant flagship while smoke and sparks filled the corridors. Heavy fighting erupted immediately inside the ship as Dominion soldiers made desperate last stands room by room. Gunfire echoed through dark hallways while emergency alarms screamed endlessly overhead. Min moved beside his soldiers through burning sections of the ship, leading the assault personally despite the danger. Human troops advanced slowly but relentlessly, forcing Dominion defenders backward toward the command deck. Many enemy soldiers surrendered once they realized the fleet outside was gone, but others fought until the final moment. The battle inside the Iron Fang became brutal and chaotic as explosions shook the giant vessel continuously. Meanwhile, Captain Hannah continued directing attacks outside, while human destroyers eliminated the last remaining Dominion cruisers attempting escape. None survived. Hidden minefields and waiting human fleets cut down every fleeing ship before it could leave Saturn's orbit. The Dominion invasion fleet had nowhere left to run. Back on Earth, billions watched live broadcasts from the battlefield with silence and disbelief. Humanity had spent years preparing for invasion, but few imagined the destruction would become so complete. Cities across Earth, Mars, and Europa held moments of silence for fallen soldiers, while emergency crews prepared to receive survivors from damaged fleets. Even during victory, humanity understood the terrible cost of war. Thousands of human ships had been destroyed during the battle. Entire stations and colonies sacrificed themselves to weaken the Dominion advance. Families across the solar system waited for news that might never come. Yet despite the pain, one truth united humanity completely. Earth had survived. Inside the Iron Fang, Colonel Min and his Marines finally reached the upper command decks after hours of brutal fighting. Smoke covered the halls while damaged lights flickered overhead. Bodies of fallen soldiers lined the corridors on both sides. As Min approached the bridge entrance, another massive explosion rocked the flagship violently. Human gravity weapons had struck nearby Dominion vessels, and the shockwave nearly tore the damaged ship apart. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut behind Min's forces while fire spread across several decks. Realizing the flagship would soon collapse completely, Min ordered his troops forward immediately. Human Marines breached the bridge doors and stormed inside through smoke and sparks. Chaos erupted instantly. Remaining Dominion guards opened fire while officers screamed in panic. Commander Rian dropped his weapon immediately and ordered surviving crew members to surrender. Commander Sora, badly wounded, collapsed beside a broken console as medics rushed toward her. At the center of the bridge, General Varek stood silently before the shattered observation window staring at Saturn's burning rings. Behind him, the remains of his once invincible fleet drifted like broken ghosts across space. Colonel Min approached carefully while armed soldiers surrounded the room. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. Then Varek slowly turned toward the humans. The proud conqueror who once believed no force in the galaxy could challenge the Dominion finally looked tired, broken, and old. He asked only one question. "How long were you preparing for this?" Min answered calmly. "Long before you arrived." Varek looked back toward the battlefield one final time as tears of rage filled his eyes. Then, before anyone could stop him, he activated the flagship's self-destruct system. Warning sirens exploded across the bridge instantly. Colonel Min shouted evacuation orders while human Marines rushed toward emergency exits. Commander Rian helped carry the wounded Sora through smoke-filled corridors as the Iron Fang began collapsing around them. Outside the flagship, Captain Hannah watched emergency signals flash across her displays and immediately ordered all nearby ships to retreat. Seconds later, the giant Dominion flagship exploded with terrifying force. A massive wave of fire spread through Saturn's orbit while broken pieces of the Iron Fang scattered across the rings like burning rain. The explosion marked the true end of the Dominion invasion. Silence slowly spread across the battlefield afterward. Human ships drifted carefully through endless fields of wreckage, while rescue teams searched for survivors among the debris. Yet almost nothing remained of the Dominion fleet. The empire that once ruled through fear had been destroyed so completely that even its wreckage barely survived. Days later, travelers across the galaxy began calling Saturn's orbit the silent graveyard, because countless broken warships still floated there beneath the glowing rings. Stories of humanity's victory spread rapidly between worlds, and the warning became legend everywhere. The Dominion won 164 victories because nobody stopped them early. But when Arrogance finally led them to Earth, humanity made sure nothing was left behind.